Hi everyone, it is Kelsey. This is Essentially Book. Thank you so much for stopping by my channel today. And today I sound a little different. After 5 years, the vid has finally struck me. So my son tested positive on Wednesday and then I tested positive 2 days later. It's very mild so far. I've just had a fever and cold symptoms, but it's fine. I don't know. It was due to happen 5 years later. I think I've had a good run. So if I sound weird, that's why. And I will say I'm filming and the lighting is a little off because it's pretty rainy out and I just need to get this video done. So I'm sorry the lighting is off. But today we're going to talk about our fantasy bingo, which if you've been following me, I've done TBRs for 3 years and I've never completed it. So this year I'm going to complete this challenge. I have made a TBR. My rule is that it has to be books that I own for the most part. There's only 3 books on this shelf on this TBR that I don't own physically. So as my never-ending quest of trying to read the books that I own, that's really the main priority with this bingo board this year. Now, our fantasy, if you're not familiar with it, is a bingo board created on the fantasy subreddit thread. And they do it every year. There's regular mode and hard mode. I'm not doing hard mode because I just don't want to. So yeah, this video will be it'll be hard to film because I'll probably be sneezing a lot. But anyways, I really just wanted to focus on reading the books that I owned. And so that's really that's the hard mode in and of itself, is I wanted to make sure the books on this TBR are the books that I own. There's a few that I had to make ends meet by finding them elsewhere because I don't own them. But really, there's 2 squares. One square this year is actually not a reading prompt, which is kind of fun. So it'll just be to watch a TV series of some kind. I'll get to that when I get to it. But then the other one, there's one box that I'm leaving open right now because I'm not sure how I feel about it. And you can swap one box with a prior year's bingo board. And so I'm going to do that probably for the one, and we'll talk about it here in a sec. This runs from April to March. So April of 2025 to March of 2026. And I've already read 2 books, so that's kind of exciting. I am really pumped about this. So let's get into this TBR. Bear with me as I sound a little different right now. And yeah. All right, so this is 25 reading prompts for the 2025 bingo board. I'm going to go box by box, talk about them, talk about what I picked, and we'll get started. So the very first box is Knights and Paladins. Read a book where the protagonist is a paladin or a knight, and then the hard mode was the character has to have a promise or an oath to keep. And so I'm going to do Legend Warned by Tracy Deonn. I have tried to listen to this. Actually, I think I need to have it on this side. I don't remember. I made the graphics before I filmed this, so. Okay, so Legend Warned by Tracy Deonn. I tried this on audio and hadn't finished it, so I have all 3 of the books and people are raving about the series, so I want to give it another try. But Legend Warned, this is an Arthurian retelling. After her mother dies in an accident, 16-year-old Bree Matthews wants nothing to do with her family memories. Her residential program for bright high schoolers at UNC Chapel Hill seems like a perfect escape until she witnesses a magical attack her very first night on campus. And it looks like the Legend Warned are descendants of King Arthur's knights, and there's a magical war coming. So there's 3 books out. I think it's just a 3-book series, but I've just heard really good things about this. So that's the first book I'll be reading. And then this next box is Hidden Gems. And this has to be a book with under 1,000 ratings, and it can't have been published in 2025 or be a new release. I don't know. I'm leaving this one blank because I'm not really into reading that. I'd rather read a book. I'd rather switch this one out for something that I want to read. And so I'm leaving this kind of as a mood read box for me when I'm just looking to complete this. So I'm not actually going to pick anything for Hidden Gem and leave that blank. And then the next one is published in the 1980s. And this was also kind of a hard one for me. But then when I was looking at options, I've never read Howl's Moving Castle and I don't know what it's about. And so I know it's a classic. I know people really like it and it's middle grade. So I figured this would be a really great time to read that. I don't own it, so I'd have to get it from the library. So that's one of the books that I don't own. But I think that is really fun and I'm excited about this square. The next one is High Fashion, and it has to be a book where clothing items, clothing, fashion, or fiber arts are important to the plot. This can be crafty. This can be a crafty main character, etc. So the book that I am picking is Heartless Hunter by Kristen Cicerelli. I think the male is actually into fiber arts, and I have the sequel approved on NetGalley, so I'm like, I should probably read the first one. I've heard really good things about this one as well, and it's about it's enemies to lovers, doesn't get more high stakes than a witch and a witch hunter falling in love. And I think the main girl, she's a witch and is trying to hide from that. So pumped about this. It's a book of the month book too that I'll get off my shelf. And then finally, Down with the System. I've had this book on my shelf forever, but read a book in which the main plot point revolves around disrupting a system. So I'm going to do Vox by Christina Dalcher. And this is set in the United States in which half the population has been silenced. Vox is the harrowing, unforgettable story of what one woman will do to protect herself and her daughter. And basically the government has decreed that women are no longer allowed more than 100 words per day. And so a little bit Handmaid's Tale-esque vibe here, but I think that sounds really interesting. So that's the first row of books that I'm hoping to read. All right, and then the next row is, the next book will be book club or read-along book. So with the Our Fantasy, they do a bunch of read-alongs and book clubs throughout the years, so you can read anything that they've read throughout the years. And I have opted to read Hench. This was an indie press list book that I've had for a while by Natalie Zina Walscott, and this is kind of that alternative, like, villain novel, comic book-y. It is a young woman discovers her greatest superpower, for good or ill, is a properly executed spreadsheet. She does boring things for terrible people because every criminal needs office help and she needs a job. Working for a monster lurking beneath the surface of the world isn't glamorous, but is it really worse than working for an oil conglomerate or an insurance company? So I've heard this is just really, really fun, and it pokes at like a lot of tropes and stuff. So that's what I'm very excited about. The next square is last in a series that's pretty self-explanatory. This is one of them that I have completed. So it is Ruthless Vows by Rebecca Ross. Gave this 3 stars. I'll talk about it in a video later, but really this one you had leeway. Any last in the series, I'm not close to finishing a lot of series, so this is perfect. It's a duology. And then the next one is Gods and Pantheons. And this one is read a book about featuring divine beings, and hard mode, there are multiple pantheons involved. I'm not doing hard mode. So kind of excited because I've actually got an Illumicrate book called God Killer. I have the sequel as well on NetGalley. This is a gorgeous book from NetGalley. So God Killer, Kissin's family were killed by zealots of a fire god. Now she makes a living killing gods and enjoys it. And it sounds like she kind of runs into like a band of people whose mission is to kill gods. And I think there's some diversity representation and disability representation, queer community. Yeah. So I'm pretty excited about that. This is just a gorgeous edition. That will be my Gods and Pantheons pick. And then a book in parts. Read a book that is separated into large sections within the main text. And for this one, I have chosen Octavia Butler's Parable of the Sower, because there are parts and it's a book I really wanted to finish. I've started it at one point, didn't make it that far, but there are parts in here, and this is a classic, and it's supposed to be really relevant right now. So global change, climate change, and economic crisis lead to social chaos in the early 2020s. California becomes full of dangers, from pervasive water shortages to masses of vagabonds who will do anything to live to see another day. This follows 15-year-old Lauren Alamina inside a gated community with her preacher father, family, and neighbors who are sheltered from surrounding anarchy. What could go wrong? It sounds really, really relevant. Then finally is on this row is Impossible Places, and I, like the rest of the internet, am going to read Dungeon Crawler Carl. This actually was brought to my attention before it kind of blew up on all the webs from one of my best friends who read it. She works at a bookstore, and we all were like, what the heck are you talking about? This sounds ridiculous. But she, like, next level excited about it. And then I was having dinner with some friends at my church, and we were doing like a best books of the year party where we just had to talk about our favorite books of the year. And another girl was raving about it, and now I'm seeing it everywhere on BookTube, so I think this is fun. This is set on Earth, and like aliens, I think, attack the Earth and like make everything collapse. And so all the occupants have to, anyone who wants to survive has to enter this video game, I guess, or this trial. This is like a 7-book series, so I don't know if I'll continue, but people are raving about this book. So that's the next one I'm going to read for that square. Okay, let's keep going. Another book that I do not own will be for the next square. This is the small press or self-published book. And the book I have chosen is Fae Gods. It's a Kindle Unlimited book. I looked on a friend's page who had recommendations that I trust, and I wanted romantasy. And she said this was really good. I know nothing about it, but it's on Kindle Unlimited. So that's it. That's all I've got for you about this box. Okay, next is Author of Color. This is like the roughest video I've ever filmed because but I need to get content out, so whatever. Okay, Author of Color. I'm gonna do Severance by Ling Ma. This is, I guess, like a zombie pandemic apocalypse book maybe, but it's like a workplace novel too. I think it's satirical. The cover like doesn't really tell you much, but I've heard this is actually really excellent. Yeah, the blurb is it the end of the world or just another day at the office, which honestly kind of feels relevant right now. Like I'm just working as if the world is fine, you know? And here we are with like the fall of democracy in our country. So maybe this will be really oddly relevant. And then the next book is going to be published in 2025. So I wanted to get a NetGalley book off my shelf. And this is The Gods Times Forgot. And I don't know much about this. It's Irish mythology collides with Gilded Age New York in this sweeping debut, enemies to lovers historical romantasy, perfect for fans of Outlander and a fate inked in blood. So yeah, I have that approved on NetGalley, which is why I picked that. So then the next one is an epistolary novel, and I just was looking for suggestions through the threads that our fantasy had, and someone said The Martian by Annie Weir, which I have not read yet. And The Martian is Project Hail Mary is one of my favorite books of all time. So I figured I'd read The Martian. He basically just has to survive in space. I trust Andy Weir. He's a great writer, so I'm pumped about that one. And then the final square is parents. So the final square is parents, and it has to have like a protagonist who is a parent. And I'm going to get another Illumicray book off my shelf with The Book Eaters. So this is, I think it's a family of people that they have to eat books and like words and thoughts to survive. But the child of this woman is more of like a sociopath or a serial killer. And the mom is trying to reckon with that. So it is fantasy, it's darker, gothic, but this is a really beautiful edition. Fourth row, biopunk. So I think it has to have like a magical system or a world that's like based off technology and not magic. And so I'm going to read the second book in the side series, which is Thunderhead. They have like a cloud that knows everything, and then the sides like kill to winnow down the population. My husband loves this series, and so I wanted to read that. That was kind of one of my goals of the last year or so. And then the next one is Elves and Dwarves, and I'm gonna go with The Silmarillion by J.R.R. Tolkien. I've had this on my shelf for years. Funny, like my first experience with this book is I bought it for my high school boyfriend, and I've always wanted to read it, I just never have. And so then I bought a copy for myself, but you know, that was, gosh, 10 plus years ago and more than that. So I just thought this was a great gift as a girlfriend in high school. This is kind of like the origin story, like the mythology behind all of the Lord of the Rings series. You get the history, a lot of backstory of that world by Tolkien. And then the next one is an LGBTQ plus protagonist, and I read The River Has Roots this week. This is very, very short. It's like this very lyrical novella about two sisters. One of them falls in love, and she falls in love with like a fae folk from a parallel world. And there's a river that these two sisters tend, and the river controls a lot of the worlds. There's a lot of magic in it. The sister who falls in love has a man who's also vying for her attention and gets very jealous. And so you just see like how that blows up. There's a queer romance. It's really, really beautiful. The writing is so good. I'm really glad I read this. She wrote This Is How You Lose the Time War, which I have not read. And then 5 short stories. This was actually on my TBR last year and I didn't finish it, so I figured I'd just roll it back on over. It's Get in Good Trouble by Kelly Link. I've read a couple of the stories. They're fun. Sorry, that was my dog. So I don't really love short stories, so this is a harder one for me, but I'm like committed to finishing it. Even if I read like 2 stories a month or something, I will get this finished. And then the last square is Stranger in a Strange Land. This is a book I'm in the middle of. It is Elantris by Brandon Sanderson. Serene is from an outside land and she's trying to like make her mark in Elantris. And so yeah, I'll finish this. Like I haven't read a lot this month and I had very lofty goals and I'm gonna fail. So if I can finish this, I will be so proud of myself, and then I'll get another box off my shelf, off my Our Fantasy Bingo. All right, the final row. I have to sneeze again. Rack. I'm also filming this. I only had to work a half day today because it is Good Friday, and my work gives us a half day. My son is home. He's finally napping. He didn't nap for 2 days. He's been home most of the week because he's been sick. So I'm kind of pumped that he's napping. So I'm trying to get this all filmed during nap time. So that's kind of also why I feel a little scatterbrained. But anyways, let's go to the last row. So the last one is pirates, and hard mode for this one I'm actually going to do because it can't be like seafaring pirates. So it's another Illumicray book, and it is The Red Scholar's Wake by Aliette de Bodard. And this is like set against a backdrop of an interstellar war against piracy and the 5 fleets' brutal fight to survive each other and the attackers arrayed against them. This is an exciting space opera, beautiful romance from an exceptional SF author. So I think this is also queer, which I think will be good get on, like to read for the year. And then not a book is the one square that I don't have to read anything for. So I'll just watch some sort of TV series sometimes this year, I'm sure. That's not what I'm stressed out about. The next one is generic title, which I think is hilarious. Let me read what the rule is for this. It's very clever. Read a book that has one or more of the following words in the title: blood, bone, broken, court, dark, shadow, song, sword, or throne. Like, they're just kind of making fun of all of the books that have been titled in fantasy this year, which is funny. I'm not even this year, but you know, they're all like Of Blood and Ash, Sword of Stone and Roses, like, you know. So I'm going to read A Song to Drown Rivers, which is, I think, a Chinese fantasy retelling. It's inspired by the legend of Zixi, one of the famous four beauties of ancient China. A Song to Drown Rivers is an epic novel steeped in the myth about womanhood, war, sacrifice, and love against all odds, as the fate of two kingdoms hangs in a delicate balance. So Anne Bogle really liked this, and she doesn't read a lot of fantasy, so I thought that was really interesting. She's from Modern Mrs. Darcy if you don't follow her. I've been following her for years. The second to last square is cozy science fiction fantasy, and I'm going to read The Spell Shop because I know this is really beloved and sweet and cozy. This was a good place with kind people who cared about each other. There was a unicorn in the woods, mermaids in the coves, and the best raspberries she'd ever tasted, and there was Laurent. So I think this is like cottagecore is one of the words, like sign me up. It's a tale full of stolen spellbooks, unexpected friendships, sweet jams, and even sweeter love. I'm like very excited for that one. And then the final one is one of the oldest books I have on my shelves, and it is Replace a Square from a Prior Year. And I am going to do one where the square, I think it was 2015, it involves like flight, someone that flies. I'm going to do The Philosopher's Flight by Tom Miller. This is a book of the month book from 2018. He's always wanted to fly like a girl. 18-year-old Robert Weeks is one of the few men who practice empirical philosophy, an arcane female-dominated branch of science used to summon the wind, heal the injured, and even fly. He's always dreamed of being the first man to join the U.S. Silvery Corps Rescue and Evacuation Department, an elite team of flying medics, but everyone knows that's impossible. Men can barely get off the ground. So I think it's kind of like a reverse, like, feminist book. I don't know, not reverse feminist, but I think this just sounds really fun. And I know if you guys ever followed Top Shelf Text on Bookstagram, like back in the OG Bookstagram days, she was one of my favorites. She was a teacher out of Boston, I think. And she loved this book, which is why it's been on my shelf forever, and I just have never gotten to it. So that's 24 books of 25 for the Our Fantasy Bingo. I think there's a solid chance this year that I'm going to complete all this. It's my goal. I'm also really excited about this TBR because they're all books that I own, with the exception of a few, but that means that at one point or another, I bought these books thinking that they would be like up my alley. That's 25 books I could potentially get off my shelf, or 22 books potentially. So that's pretty exciting, I think. So if you're participating in this, let me know. If you've read any of these also, I'd be curious to know your thoughts. And until the next video, you guys, I'll see you later. Hopefully the next time I film, I'm on top of all this crud and on the mend. Bye, guys.